and welcome into another episode of Dagger Heart to Heart, your favourite Daggerheart community podcast with me, Gethin Pierce, the Welsh DM, and that is Nico Daggerheart, aka It's Nico Daggerheart online.
Hi.
And we are back to talk all things Daggerheart, TTRPGs, and generally being nerds in a lovely communal space. Nico, how have things been? What have you been up to in the last 2 weeks?
I've started streaming myself on Twitch and YouTube. I decided to kind of like change things up because you and I were just talking about this off camera, but anytime something starts to feel stale or just like you're not getting joy out of it, right? You need to find that joy. And so I'm trying to switch things up because I think that variety is the spice of life. Yeah. So it's not like I'm done making shorts or anything. I was just like, what else could I do just to try something different? And so I'm finding that I'm probably spending as much time streaming as I am as I do making shorts, because shorts take like 4 to 6 hours from top to bottom. But besides that, I'm, doing the Dice Rolleth, an actual play. I'm also going to start another podcast style show called Hardy Brews with my friend Thomas,
cool.
aka Dorkside VO. Yes. And it's kind of like this kind of talk show style, but we wanted to demonstrate that one, homebrewing stuff, especially for a game like Daggerheart, does not have to take very long at all. I mean, it can be done in less than 30 minutes. You can create something from scratch. And also that you don't have to have this like intensely robust command of the system the way you need to for D&D or Pathfinder before you can make anything even remotely functional. Because in those games, if you don't know everything about the system from one end of the book to the other, you can easily make something that just fucks everything up. And I think that gives a lot of people anxiety when it comes to like homebrewing stuff.
I can speak to that plenty, because what I've spent the last 2 weeks doing is finalising the final pieces of content for the Dragon's Vault book and starting to edit it. And I can speak to the volume.
Dragon's Vault book?
Spoilers. Dragon's Vault book is an upcoming project from a bunch of Daggerheart creators, where all of the previous Magic Mondays that you may have seen on this channel are now going to be compatible for Daggerheart. And it is remarkable how quickly 250 odd pieces of loot and weapons and stuff comes together into Daggerheart form. Stuff that took many years to compile in D&D, very quickly converted, and is looking very cool. But yes, a lot of editing still to go on that, and that's what we have been working on and will continue to work on until it's ready to go. But that's our weeks. Let's get on with the podcast. Nico, as always, a pointless inane question to start the episode. What's your favourite NPC voice that you've done recently?
Oh, recently. Because I was going to say my favourite one is Snick Snack the Goblin.
Yeah?
I used it in one of my shorts to demonstrate how you can, like, try doing sort of, like, stereotypical or character voices, and if you just kind of like turn the knob down a little bit and make that voice a lot more subtle, you can create more realistic characters like Snack the Goblin, who talks like this. But I feel like, that's an easy enough thing to do. Sneaky No Curse. Sneaky No Curse is a gnome who's very much actually just like Satan in disguise. Well, a devil in disguise. I don't know if it's the devil. It's whatever Levistus from the Forgotten Realms. Yep. But Sneaky No Curse has a little... they have a little pencil-thin mustache that curls around like this, and they sell items that are definitely not cursed.
I love them already. They're great. For me, it was an impromptu ogre encounter in a travel session. One of my players went, "Can we come across some trolls on a bridge?" And I was suddenly doing, "All right, Jeff, we got these lads coming over from the bridge that we've got, and they're not paying up. We've got the goats already. This one said we could be a knight, whatever that means." And it was 3 subtle variations on essentially the 3 trolls from The Hobbit, which ended in them being knighted. And now these 3 ogres are now rampaging the countryside, finding other people to knight and damsels to save, which we may revisit at some point in the campaign.
Let that be a lesson to all the people who say, like, I can't possibly run a good session unless I over prepare everything. it's always those kinds of like fun, kind of almost throwaway characters that you made up on a whim that end up becoming like weirdly immortalized in your player's memory. In fact, that was one of the things too, where it's like I've had characters that I worked really, really hard on, like what are their motivations, what drives them, like I try to know and create this really cool character inside and out. And then there was Snick Snack the Goblin. And I remember going like, why am I trying this hard on all of these characters I make when it's the ones that I put no effort into that seem to just blow up?
It reminds me of an NPC I randomly made who was just like a posh, tough, rich boy who gave my party a tour of the city and gave them like an Airbnb to stay in for the week. And he was great fun, and my character was obsessed with him. They're not ever going to go back to that city, probably, but they absolutely adore him. He's great. I love Tarquin.
Yeah, I think what the trick to making those characters interesting as well is, besides just being like likable or fun, is don't give them a full backstory. Give them a nugget, like a little something, just a nod to some kind of larger backstory that you haven't even fleshed out. Your players don't know this one way or another, and it doesn't really matter either way, because even if you did flesh it out, they're not privy to everything you already know or don't know, right? But I like to give little nuggets or clues about hints about their backstory that makes the players, I should say, go like, wait, so what's up? What do they mean about that thing that they just said? Or, oh, that's really interesting. Could this possibly be, insert the blank?
Yeah.
Because the space between, right?
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, that's one of our most interesting questions yet, I will say. I'm proud of that one. News and updates for this episode of Daggerheart to Heart. First of all, Daggerheart Actual plays. If you have ever been sitting there and wanting to see how experts do it, well, first of all, watch this podcast more often. But second of all, there are 3 one-shots now available on the Darrington Press YouTube channel, where they were showing off the Alchemy VTT with GMs like Amy Vorpal and J.R. Williams and it's in the note somewhere, Safia Dula-Ijan. I apologize if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. Doing wonderful actual plays.
Somebody please correct us in the comments and write it out for us, because we're not trying to butcher somebody's name. We're just terrible at reading on site, and clearly didn't do enough research before we read this aloud.
Yeah. I watched a couple of clips of it. It did seem very good. It is a great opportunity to watch talented GMs utilize the system and showcase how to use it. So if you're interested in that and you like to learn TTRPGs through actual plays, go check them out. Nico, have you had a chance to check them out at all?
I actually have checked out some actual plays. I would like to, right off the bat, say first actual play I watched of Daggerheart was Age of Umbra. And I think that was a very interesting transitional period, because 2 things were at play here with Matt Mercer. The first one was, this is a dude who came up on GMing for Pathfinder and later D&D 5e, right? And so even though they had worked on this game and the game was finally out, right, they themselves were really getting the hang of running Daggerheart. And they've admitted that themselves on AMAs that they popped into, like the first couple of Darrington Press AMAs about Daggerheart. They were like, I've learned a lot. Because everybody seems to think that everything somebody does that they don't like is a deliberate choice on the internet. I don't think that that's the case. The other one I watched is by Viva La Dirt League, which I love VLDL. They're probably one of my favorite YouTube channels, especially with their D&D actual plays and stuff. Excellent production quality, great editing. Even the subtitles are a lot of fun to read. Although that one, I think, also struggled a little bit. I really, really loved their D&D actual plays, but I had heard that a lot of their fans weren't big fans of the Daggerheart actual play, and I wasn't sure why. And it seems that what I got told was a lot of their fans were expecting a very epic adventure kind of thing. And not only is this adventure a bit smaller in scale, but Daggerheart, as you and I know, the whole thing is throwing aside these super complex mechanics and sort of surrendering to the storytelling and narrative aspect of the game, as opposed to you surrendering to all the mechanics.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge fan of Rob Hartley. They're a fantastic GM. When I went to Gen Con the first time, Well, so far it's the only time, but soon it'll be the first time after I go a second time later next month. But I even went to their panel. Incredible GM. Everybody should check out their channel and look at their stuff. Can't recommend them enough. But they took the Beast Feast campaign frame and then they made it way crunchier. Like you need specific tools to do things. And so there's like all kinds of crafting stuff involved, all kinds of, and it became this really crunchy thing where it was like a survival game more so than like going on an adventure and, you know, like Delicious in Dungeon Meshi, the anime, which is what Beast Feast is kind of made around. And suddenly I'm watching this and I'm going, oh, yeah, guys, this is not what Daggerheart is supposed to be about. I mean,
I think it's
not trying to yap someone's yum, but
I think
go ahead.
Yeah, it's a classic example of like I almost feel bad for these infamous GMs with actual plays when they get thrown into a new system and told to run it because people expect them to be great at it the first time. And even Matt, who'd been like playtesting it or anything like that, it's a very different kettle of fish. And I think both of us have learned that Daggerheart is, we say it's different from D&D. And if you're coming from a D&D mindset as a GM, you've got to learn to roll with the system in a different way and prep for the system in a different way.
Where like the beauty or the boon of the system is its simplicity. So in taking a much simpler system and then making it just as crunchy as the game you moved away from, it kind of then sort of grapples with itself. And I saw that be an issue, but I can't wait to see them come out with more actual plays or play Daggerheart again. And I also am really looking forward to the actual play by Dungeons and Daddies, who has a Daggerheart side adventure.
Cool.
That I can't wait to listen to.
Yeah, that'd be good. Anyway, yes, actual plays are aplenty. If you're interested in the Alchemy VTT as well, go check out the ones on the Darrington Press YouTube channel. Speaking of the beauty of Daggerheart, the art and making of Daggerheart book is now back up for pre-order after it briefly appeared sometime a few months ago, a year ago. If you're curious about the process of making what an art of what a TTRPG looks like from the visuals, go check out this book. Perfect kind of coffee table book for you. Look at all the pretty stuff of Daggerheart and learn a little bit of the behind the scenes of how the TTRPG came together. I'm quite excited for it. I don't know about you.
Yeah, no, I love art in general, and I think that the art for Daggerheart is beautiful. And I also think that anything that demonstrates like the production process to the layman is always good because it's like educational, right? I find that like a lot of the biggest speculation on the internet and the hottest takes come from people who don't actually get how stuff works. So anything that makes people get things more, I'm a fan of.
It's great. Go check it out if you're interested in doing that. And the last piece of news is from Heart of Daggers, our community spotlight. Last episode, their Fear Fest announcement that is coming in October. Unfortunately, at the point this episode goes out, it's a little late to submit for their mentorship program, but the mentorship program is worth calling out because it's an incredible thing that they're doing to give back to community from friends of the podcast, Mike Underwood and Carla Cisco, who are taking on someone's and mentoring them through a project, which is just really cool. But generally, overall, Fear Fest is basically massive celebration, encouraging people to submit content to put on Heart of Daggers that's spooky, that's horror, that's creepy around Halloween. For people who don't know the internet, Halloween is TTRPG Christmas. It always has been. It probably always will be. It's Curse of Strahd in one night. It's Halloween horror one-shots. It's all of that stuff. It's flirting with the sexy pumpkin scarecrow. TTRPGs in a nutshell is Halloween. And Heart of Daggers are looking to grab that momentum and run with it. I might try and do something for it. I don't have a concrete idea yet, but we'll see what I can come up with. I think all of the recent sci-fi campaign frames might have me picking back up a concept I wanted to run in Mothership, and whether I can get it to run in Daggerheart, maybe.
And I think I mentioned Starbreaker in the last episode, but that's also a really good sci-fi one. And by the way, besides Fearfest as a whole, specifically the mentorship that Carlos Cisco and Mike Underwood are running as part of Fearfest is called the Pistol Haunt Menagerie of Mentorship, which I just think is...
We love a pun.
I'm going to pat you all on the back. If you guys are watching this right now, if the two of y'all see this episode, I want you to know Carlos and Mike Underwood, Pat on the back. That's a fantastic name. Love a good portmanteau.
Yeah, incredible. Look, I've done 3 Halloween horror themed books for D&D. It's time I did one for Daggerheart.
Are you realizing that the Daggerheart creator community is so small that like our podcast, let's just put it out there, this is all just a big circle jerk.
Yeah, we need to get other people on. Anyway.
Hey, and like, by the way, while we're on this topic, we're down to bring other people on too. A lot of the first community spotlights and stuff, including the New Unknown, are people who hit us up, like reached out to us, right, and put themselves on our radar. So we happen to know people like Carlos Cisco and Mike Underwood. They're really cool people. And obviously, Gethin makes stuff, I make stuff, right? But if there are other people here who are interested in being mentioned on our show or would like us to turn our attention to you guys, we're not trying to be like the Cool Kids Club at all. We would love to have you even be a guest on our show.
100%. Especially when it comes to community spotlight. The reason it's called the community spotlight and not the big product spotlight is we want to showcase anything big or small that is cool and for the community. So if you've got things you want to share, let us know. We really probably should set up an email that people can send stuff into. But well, let's speed on to our main topic. This week on Dagger Heart to Heart, we are talking about social encounters. Probably the fiddliest, the least well-defined of the classic TTRPG pillars, social encounters. Nico, you and I have spent many times talking about them on shorts and videos on our channels and individually about how to run them. What makes social encounters difficult feels like a harsh word, but so difficult to run conceptually in TTRPGs compared to stuff like combat and exploration?
Okay, well, in large part, I think because it's the association, right? Like, when we think of a game like Daggerheart, literally the name has a weapon in it, right? Or when we hear Dungeons and Dragons, right? Immediately we're thinking of a dragon we have to fight and the dungeon we're going to fight them in. Draw Steel literally is about drawing your weapon. But because of that, right, these games occupy the same space as this sort of imagination, fighting monsters and demons and being a hero, right? We don't associate, or some of us don't, associate these games with all of the fiction that we indulge in that has nothing to do with stabbing people with swords or blowing them up with fireballs. And so there's like this mental disconnect, I think. So like Mean Girls, I use that as an example all the time, right? But the whole movie is just a series of social encounters between various, PCs and NPCs, right? And it's like there's nothing in that. Well, there's that one scene where everybody like devolves into animals and somebody like Lindsay Lohan like pounces on somebody. But other than that, there's no combat in that movie, but it's still a super fun movie to watch, right? And so that is to say that there is interesting narrative beats in social encounters in dramas like that, but we don't put Mean Girls and Daggerheart in the same space in our brain the way we do Daggerheart and say literally any fantasy movie with a sword in it ever. The whole genre of swords and sorceries.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's my thought.
Yeah, I think you've hit a good point there that like on some level it's TTRPGs have been shaped by their history in that D&D spun out of tabletop wargaming and spiraled from there. And so the system is very supportive of that fantasy, of that way of playing the game. But I think also it touches on something that Brendan Lee Mulligan said around their actual play podcast, Worlds Beyond Number, about how the reason they chose to run their first big dramatic story, which was about storytelling with their friends in D&D, despite it being a combat-centric thing, is that's where they needed the rules. Right? Because social interaction, talking to people is something we all do all of the time. What we don't do all of the time is swing swords at each other's faces and figure out what that actually means. And so that's where I think it's almost an oxymoronic situation that TTRPGs get themselves into, where they go, well, we don't need to provide the rules of this. People talk at the table. It's a social game anyway.
Yeah.
It'll figure it out. But then it's not supported and people kind of go looking for it. And the people who don't necessarily have those skills to do it in a role-playing way rather than just around the table feel that it's not supported enough for them to leverage it. And I think that's where the difficulty comes in, where people don't necessarily have the solid foundation to start role-playing off of.
Yeah, and I also think that that's a very interesting sort of philosophical conversation we can get into, because the idea of playing any TTRPG, right? Like, essentially, all you are doing is sitting at a table talking to people. And I can understand the argument for why you'd be like, why do I need mechanics to support what I'm literally doing with another human being right now? At the same time, though, right, like the stakes of you talking, I mean, some people have anxiety disorders or autism and they really, 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 really struggle with social situations. So it does feel like a life or death situation to them. That's valid. And I'm not saying it's not. But at the same time, right, there are some people who like, how do we make it? It doesn't have stakes. And so we go, how do we make it interesting, right? And so a lot of these social environments and stuff, social events, social encounters, social NPCs or social adversaries, right? These are all ways to, and I hate to reference this show because it's got an actor who has been canceled for super valid reasons, but House of Cards, right? You know, our personal lives are rarely going to have the stakes of the American presidency. But like, we can feign that, right? We can play make-believe in the same way we can sort of watch the show and go, oh my gosh, even though none of that's happening to us, right?
Yeah.
Is with some of these, you know, social encounters, with these social environments and stuff like that. And if you read some of the actions like that the environments have for social encounters in Daggerheart, very funny. You can tell somebody was like, there was probably two people sitting at a table going like, hey, what if I named it, you know, that thing that happens when you poop yourself a little bit because you ran too hard. I don't know. You can tell people were dicking around when they wrote this stuff, which is fun.
That's the nature of TTRPGs to an extent, isn't it? I suppose before diving into the specifics of social encounters in Daggerheart, you touched on a TTRPG there that tries to codify social interactions quite extensively in Draw Steel, with its negotiations system. I think it ended up being called, whatever it is. I've not had a chance to run through it. I have read it and listened to other people discussing it. It is an interesting way about trying to do it. Ginny D did a whole video on why she loves using it. Have you had much experience of it? Do you find it helps in those situations? Is it what it lives up to be?
Yeah, and also while we're mentioning people like bigger YouTubers who have done videos about it, Mystic Arts, Dottie also has a video about how they pulled that whole mechanic from Draw Steel and put it into their game. And cool. Also, I know they're probably not watching this, but what's up, Dottie? Or Dottie, sorry. By the way, there's the second D the second D in their name is a thorn. But yes, I remember using that in Draw Steel, and it was interesting because, well, it was interesting. I would say because, like, with combat, right? Obviously, we have to, especially with turn-based combat, like in D&D and Draw Steel and Pathfinder and all of those, right? It becomes this completely separate game that's like disjointed from the rest of the game that you're playing. Versus in Draw Steel, it felt like the whole system from beginning to end of session was a series of these like subcategories of the game, right? So combat ran like this. And now rather than social encounters just be handled, you know, through roleplay, it's handled with this other subsystem and stuff. And I'm one of those people who likes to just kind of go with the flow. I mean, it's not that I'm not autistic. It's just I've taken a lot of improv classes before, and maybe it's exposure therapy. So I've screwed up enough social encounters to know that it's okay to mess them up. Especially if I'm playing at a table, it's with people that I'm comfortable with.
Yeah.
Right. I do paid games, but most of the people that are in my paid games are also people that I've like gotten to know. So they're not completely strangers, and I know where I stand with them. Right. So I'm okay not having this super codified like social interaction system. It's just one more set of rules that I have to look up sometimes that I don't want to have to deal with.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of take it or leave it.
I think the takeaway I took from the various videos I've seen on it and the reading of that system was that I think I want a middle ground between that and what D&D does. You know what I mean? Where D&D is just like, we have an influence action, good luck. And Draw Steel goes kind of all of this way. And I think, and I've yet to properly stress test it, but I think that's almost where Daggerheart falls, which is unsurprising. I think Daggerheart falls into that mid-range with most of its system. But I think Daggerheart provides you with enough tools for mechanical fallback while not imposing a rigid structure of like steps you have to follow to complete the encounter.
I'd like to say that if Draw Steel is like an extreme version of this, and Pathfinder is second edition to an extent as well, because they have a bunch of tables and subsystems about this too. But if Draw Steel is like this sort of super game where there's all these sub games in it, whether it's combat or socialization, right? Daggerheart tries to make the entire system a single game that kind of moves a little this way or kind of moves a little this way, depending on if you're in combat or social encounter. And I think that its strength does lie in the fact that whether you're murdering people with a sword or murdering people with a pen, with your words, exactly. The mechanics stay the same, right? You're marking stress, you're rolling dice, there's a difficulty check, right? And so I don't feel like dealing with a social environment and a social adversary, I'm playing a totally separate game versus the one that is a standard adversary in a more action-y environment. Which means just less to have to learn,
Yeah, I think that's it. It makes it feel a little bit more natural as you go to move in and out of it, where necessary, rather than a starting
shift.
gun and a finish line kind of thing.
Yeah. Because like D&D, with D&D, the way when people say like roll initiative, it's that feeling that like, this is the beginning. Combat has started. This is combat, versus like, I remember the first time I ran initiativeless combat for a group and they were like, we were like, are we fighting right now? Like, I know that they just stabbed me with a sword, but like, is this like, what's going on here? It's an adjustment, right? It's just different.
Speaking on mechanics there, right? I think the beauty that Daggerheart has, the very subtle thing that it has is that stress system that's built in. I think I remember discussing this with Mike Underwood a long time ago, that stress, or Mike might have done it in a stream, I can't remember. It was definitely Mike who said it anyway, where stress is almost like the HP for social encounters, right? You're not going to be... HP is for stabbing them with a sword. Stress is for, as we've said, stabbing them with your words. Shakespeare would love this podcast. That's the conclusion I've come to. I've said it now. And like just that ability to manipulate stress in a way, and you do see it in the social adversaries, right? Like they deal stress to people. They tend to have higher stress than HP. I spoke about this actually in on my channel, the OKGM series, running social encounters, of the concept of having this ticking clock, this almost HP, because it was D&D coded at the time, that players are trying to beat or get over with encounters and rolls and all of that. And stress kind of codifies that in a neater packaging that you can leverage certain ways, and you can then showcase it back to the players of like how it's taken its toll on them as well, as the cutting words come in, and like you try to make a snide comment at the dinner party and it doesn't land and everyone looks at you weirdly, and now you have to mark a stress. And you can show that kind of back and forth a lot easier, a lot on someone's sheet, where it becomes a lot more real for them as to how the encounter is going.
Yes, and to that point too, with some of the subsystems that they have for D&D or Pathfinder or even Draw Steel, right? Like it's almost like a succeeding at the encounters is like a ladder you're trying to climb, right? And so the dice roll is whether you go further up the ladder or you get stuck or you actually drop down a few pegs, right? Or a few steps, versus when you have this sort of like stress system, there's a push and a pull, right? You're not just going up a ladder or going down a ladder, you're getting hit by things and you're hitting back, and that's also fun too, because suddenly it becomes a lot more competitive, which,
The question I always run into with trying to leverage things like this is, when do you bring them in? It's one of my biggest, I don't know whether it's a failing, but it's a habit of my GMing, is when I get into these kind of social encounters where it's all tense and the party are negotiating with a noble or with a dangerous police officer kind of guard person, is when to actually bring the dice and the mechanics into it. And I know other people struggle with this as well, because I often just get caught up in the role play and I'm just like, I know the character that I'm embodying, the NPC, I know how they would react to what you're saying, and we just keep going on that. But there becomes a point that, like, as always gets caught up in these conversations, is like, the bard player shouldn't have to be as charismatic as their character to be able to influence the discussion.
And the other side of that coin too, right, is we've all had a player who in a role play scene, like, they really gave themselves to the role play and they did this basically like a real life performance, or they made like a really excellent point in a negotiation or some kind of conversation, right? And you go like, the question is basically, do I go, okay, cool, well, roll your dice, because what you said means fuck all if you fail the dice roll, right? And then we have to improvise how that failure works in spite of the incredible speech they made, and how that was completely essentially pointless other than like being a bit now. Or, right, but then you can say, well, all right, that was incredible, I'm not even going to make you roll for that, right? That just works. But then you have players go, well, hold on, I had to roll. Like, I can just make a good enough point and then cheat the rules.
Yeah. I mean, this argument came up in the last week with Critical Role, and it's happened twice in Critical Role, actually, both with Sam doing giving an eloquent speech or a very good lie, with Brennan as the GM, and Brennan genuinely sits there and goes, "That's so good, we don't need to roll." And someone, I cannot remember which creator online, I apologize, I think it's like the Buff GM or something like that, bald beard, muscle, lovely guy. Anyway, made a point that a lot of TTRPGs say that the dice exist to determine outcomes determine situations where the outcome is not known. And I think that's the thing that I especially, I'm not going to talk for all GMs, but I, as one, and many GMs out there, can perhaps do better to compartmentalize in these kind of encounters, is go, the mechanics are there, especially with Daggerheart, of using stress and all of this, and using the rolls for when, or using the rolls especially, for when the outcome is uncertain. If a player makes an excellent point, then we don't need to roll. We can go, that's fine, that's made the point, let's move the forward. That causes a stress or whatever. But if they make a middling point or something to that effect, or as we say, like they're just saying, or they're role playing in third person, which is an entirely legitimate way to play the game, where they say, I tried to make a point about how they have been stealing money from the treasury and I have the evidence, but I don't have it on me, and I try to convince people that I actually do have it. And you go, okay, that's then a roll kind of thing. And I think that's the thing to compartmentalize, is just remember, like, bring the dice in when they're needed. They're not always needed, which is vague advice, but does hopefully narrow it down a little bit for people.
I think that the people who have a lot of anxiety, or new GMs, because it tends to be that newer GMs have a lot of anxiety, and sometimes you become a super experienced GM and you still have anxiety. But I think that, part of it is the idea of getting stuff wrong, right? They're worried about, am I handling this well? Is this the right way to do this? Will this bother my players? For example, though, like you were just saying, like, I know my NPCs well enough to know it's not uncertain whether or not that point that character made, or whatever it is, would make this NPC go, yeah, no, you're right, But sometimes, especially if I like hear their point and I'm thinking in the NPC's head, I'm like, that's hard to really, they could go either way with whether or not that like changes their mind. That's how that for me, that's when I don't know, right? Because I know some people can be dogmatic about it, and anytime it's not just a 100% guarantee according to the laws of physics, that's what they think, you do or don't know is based off of, versus it's just like, as a GM, I know my NPC would react well or poorly to this thing because I know my NPC.
I think you've hit an excellent point with that, right? Of like, we know our NPC, and this is actually a topic point that I want to get onto, but something within that as well is we've got to make sure that while we know our NPC, and let's say a PC, and I think this comes up in the draw steals negotiation system, if a player makes a point that we know would not resonate with the NPC, that's fine. Mm-hmm. You need to kind of make it apparent to the players of why that hasn't worked so they can adjust their strategy in the moment. Like if a PC threw a magical bolt at the Chaos Elemental and it just went, well, that didn't really work. It was like, it's made of magic, and so it kind of absorbed half of the damage and was seemingly unaffected. The PCs gain information in that moment to shape their strategy in the rest of the encounter. And we need to make sure that we're kind of doing that and feeding information to the players as to how our NPCs are reacting to the ideas they're putting forward if it's not quite landing.
Fully agree.
The point I wanted to make within that, as you were kind of making out about like knowing our NPCs, I think is the key thing here. Like we as GMs do, as much as we say Daggerheart is great for a bit more freeform and less prep, we do need to put some prep in and know the people that people are going to be engaging with.
Yeah.
I suppose the thing that we want to make sure is like, I think every negotiation ends with both parties getting something out of it. So
right.
What advice can we hand to people of like how to establish good NPC wants and desires and like places where they might be vulnerable and that kind of thing?
Oh, Gethin, you have essentially, that question alone could be its own episode.
Yeah, probably.
It's important with a negotiation to go in knowing, if we're talking about negotiations specifically of all the various social encounters, you have to go in with, what do the two parties want? You already know as the GM what the players want because they've been talking about it the whole time, right? And they're not, telepathic, so they have to communicate that with each other. So you know what the players want. And you also have probably played with your players long enough to know how they're going to handle this, or what kind of stunts they're going to try to pull, versus you have to know also as the NPC, what do they want? And you have to make sure that as you're deciding whether it's something that they, if it's like they want help to save their imprisoned brother, then the NPC isn't going to walk away from this whole negotiation without getting that, right? There's all kinds of other concessions that they might have at their disposal that they might make, but they need to walk away from the negotiation with the insurance that the PCs are going to help their brother. And even having that little bit of information sort of lodged in the back of your mind as you're acting them out, it can really be like a guiding light,
Yeah, I think let's not get bogged down too much in it. I think that's the simple advice, and you kind of almost said it at the top when we were discussing accents, of find a nugget to build the NPC around, their core thing that they're wanting. Everything else you can probably kind of pull from there in the moment based on things. And just stay true to that central premise of the NPC. And if you keep true to that, they're going to be fleshed out enough for whatever scene you're running, and your players are going to make sure they're believable. So just find what makes the NPC them, and you're kind of good to go. Don't overcomplicate it, I think, is the short term.
You know what, though? Isn't that everybody's bane? especially with a simpler game like Daggerheart, right? Is like people are going to try to overcomplicate it if they can.
Yeah.
And that's also why I find that some people enjoy crunchier systems, is because their brains either want or is trained for something to be overcomplicated. And so those systems give them an answer to the questions that they ask, versus some people who are fine with improvising the answer or don't need to ask that question in the first place.
Yeah, spot on. Well, the last point I want to bring up about running social encounters in Daggerheart is, for GMs especially, how do we make use of our fear? Fear in combat encounters is nice and obvious. We spotlight another adversary, or we do a special move. What ways are interesting? What can we like stick in a GM toolbox to pull out when we need it in a social encounter? One of my favorite ones that I think is like, maybe it's on the spy stat block or something like that, but it's revealing a secret of the PCs in the moment. Whether that is one that you'd pre-established with the character, one that you'd invented that the player doesn't know yet, or one where you go to the player, hey, what's a secret about your character that no one else in the party knows, and then gets revealed. That's my like favorite like last ditch attempt of the person they're trying to beat in the social encounter to try and upset the scales. Do you have any in particular uses of fear in your social encounters that you've pulled out yet?
So I have a short where I describe fear as oh shit points, right? And you know, whether it's the PC or the player, having, especially because there's different ways for someone to say oh shit, right? There's the oh shit, you know, and a lot of times that means the player's probably not having a great time. But if you have a player go oh shit or oh shit, you know, that's a fun oh shit, at which point, you know, anything that I can tell in advance will make my player, like if because I'll just have ideas pop into my brain, right? And if I go, oh, that's gonna make my players do the oh shit, you know. And I did the same thing with combat, right? So let's take like a restaurant, because a lot of people, by the way, I've spoken to the masses, all 6 of them, and asked them kind of like what would be helpful in examples. It's always examples. So an example where I'm going to use fear in a social encounter, everybody. Going to a restaurant, something that both your magical elf person who shoots fireballs will end up inevitably doing, and you in real life will end up inevitably doing. So there's a parallel right there. You don't even have to imagine what it's like to be able to cast fireball at a taco joint, because, you know, you don't need to cast fireball to be able to walk in a taco joint. Anyway, going to a restaurant, and if it was like one of those wait staffs that kind of is like a jerk to you, you know, like a sassy waiter, or sorry, a sassy server, because we don't say waiter or waitress anymore. A sassy server who is giving you like flack and stuff. That could be like a social adversary. And I feel like in the environment, and maybe they're not a stat block, like maybe they're not an adversary. Maybe it's just the environment, and one of the fear moves could be getting a sassy server, or I would spend a fear to say like they put your food. Oh, you are all going to feel this in your soul, right? Especially if you're the type of people who hate confrontation and hate complaining about your food. They put the food down, and I'll spend a fear when you notice that instead of giving you double rice, they gave you rice and beans. And now you have to tell them they got your order wrong.
Mark of stress.
They would, I know that everybody here who has ever gone to a restaurant and has like, you know, that kind of thing where like, I hate to tell them that they got my order wrong, or, oh no, they put this on my burger, I guess I'll just suffer. You know, all of you I know heard that fear move and went, oh shit. Am I right?
Yep, spot on. Other examples that I can think of that are not as good as that, because that was evocative. 2 that spring to mind. One for my own campaign. I ran a social encounter where the fairy bard in my party was accused of crimes and was taken to fairy court, except fairy courts are the fairy courts, so it was actually just a massive ballroom where they had to convince everyone else that they were innocent. It wasn't actually like a courtroom or anything. It was very fun double entendre. But within that, I essentially just used the fear to have invent a character that just had a grudge against the PC who was on trial, and just using that to essentially just bring up a piece from someone's backstory, or an outside tipping of the scales to everything that's going on. But the one that immediately actually came to mind isn't even from Daggerheart. It is from Campaign 2 of Critical Role. It is when the Mighty Nine are in the throne room of the Kryn dynasty, and the soldier that they fought at the border enters the room. And it is using fear to essentially do a callback to something that happened earlier that influences this moment. And just like making sure you're keeping notes of things that might be relevant, that you can bring up in a way that perhaps you didn't expect, but feels narratively weighty. And as you say, it is an, oh shit, we're going to get caught in a lie here moment.
Yeah, and I might be misremembering this, but in my own actual play, the one I'm a part of, the Dice Rolleth, one of our GMs, Alan Mahana, or Stories by Alan, used a fear when I think I was trying to pull a fast. I was a wordsmith bard. I was trying to pull a fast one on someone because they thought they recognized this person, and I was like, no, they just have like one of those faces, and the way they've done their makeup is just like a very trendy way to do it. And I think I rolled pretty well, and then they spent a fear, essentially to make the person I was talking to be well-traveled, which it was totally within the realm of possibility for this rich character that they would have traveled around and seen a bunch of different trendy things in a bunch of different trendy places, right? So they were like, I'm going to spend a fear. And then essentially they were like, I know that place. I know what's trendy with their makeup stylings and stuff like that. It is not that. And I was like, okay, I know that there's an argument to be made about like, don't ever do things that just like shut down something cool that a PC did or a PC success. But that worked so well narratively in that situation. And I was like, Alan, I got to give this one to you. That really made me feel like, oh shit. I think I might have said oh shit on the stream or on the recording. If not, there were plenty of other moments that made me go oh shit. But yeah, that's another example.
Well, hopefully those examples help you out with running social encounters in Daggerheart. Use fear freely, use stress freely, and just hold on to a single truth about your character, and you should be good to go. But speaking of actual plays that you're part of, Nico, I think it's time for our community spotlight.
This Dice Rolleth! I don't know if I got cut off by Discord's voice isolation thing, but it's the Dice Rolleth. Sorry, what were you going to say?
Yes, this episode's community spotlight is the Dice Rolleth. We've spoken about actual plays at the beginning of this episode, and we're going to speak about actual plays at the end of this episode. And actually, I am going to be quiet because our one and whatever the slogan is, Nico, you are part of the Dice Rolleth. Take it away. Tell us all about the Dice Rolleth and why it's a wonderful actual play that people should check out.
Yes, hi, I'm one of the 3 producers on the Dice Rolleth, along with Redhead and Alan Mahana, Stories by Alan. And the Dice Rolleth was an actual play that started in the Heart of Daggers Discord server. Again, just another circle jerk. And it was just a bunch of people who are very active in that server who were like, man, I wish I could do an actual play. Yeah, I wish I could do an actual play too. I'm a professional graphic designer. I'm Nico DeGaio, and then I had been in an actual play that hadn't quite built up the momentum. Like it got a little deflated. There was a question about, and that actual play actually is becoming a thing soon too, which is cool. But when I was kind of coming down from that and really bummed because I was like, oh, I guess this is just not happening. There I was in this server with a bunch of Daggerheart enthusiasts who are all also just generally into TTRPGs and have all these creative pursuits, whether it's their main career or a side thing that they do. And I was hearing them all talk about, it would be so cool if we did do an actual play. Oh, well. And I was like, no, hey, guys, why don't we just do it then? And it got whipped together. And so it's really cool because it's got a big cast. We're pulling people in and out of the community. We have rotating GMs. So I did the first one, which was like a live stream. And then we've had Azu the Bard GM one of them. Alan Mahana has just GM'd a 3-episode, 3-episode arc. And then we have one of the other producers, Redhead, who's going to be doing their own 3-episode arc. And after that, I'm going to be doing an arc, and I'm probably going to be using Colossus of the Drylands, a bunch of Pistol Heart stuff that I've been dying to try out, as well as Menagerie of Mayhem Adversaries by Mike Underwood, because there's like a lot of aberrational horror eldritch stuff going on in Colossus of the Drylands, if you didn't know. Elder gods coming out from the grave, just wacky stuff. So anyway, it's really cool because it's not just like one person, right? It's so many people who came together, and we're all learning as we go. Alan's been took over as the editor. They've just done an incredible job. A lot of our graphics are by Redhead as well, and it's just like I know I mentioned them in the last episode briefly, but I just want to say, just could not see that dream realized without having those two at my side. Rotatingly too, because sometimes I'm at their side, sometimes I'm still on the side, but I'm on the other side, right? And that's what's really cool too, is as a creative who puts a lot of pressure on themselves, having someone to share the load with, right? And having somebody who looks out for your blind sides and stuff. It's one of the reasons I love working with you, for example. But yes, we also officially have a Patreon. So if you guys would like to support the Dice Rolleth, that would be awesome. Where we work regularly, by the way, with Gethin Entertainment. They're fantastic third-party creators. So if you guys have seen any of their, oh my God, I'm totally blanking on the name of their zine.
No.
The Heartbeat?
Heartbeat, yes.
Right? Yeah. Their zine, The Heartbeat. They're also on Patreon. Check them out too. And
also part of the Dragon's Vault project.
Yes. And we have recently, and speaking of which, I am and Azu the Bard, both of whom have been on the Dice Rolleth, are part of Dice Rolleth, are also designing on the Dragon's Vault. But I will say one more thing, really big, is I've had some people say I haven't watched the episodes because I feel like I need to really sit down, buckle down, and like plow through them because there's like a lot of visual elements and stuff. Mm-hmm. To that point, I said, what if instead of not watching them because you don't feel like you can sit down and concentrate on just like staring at the screen for an hour, we literally rip the vocals right out of it and we make it audio only and we put it on Spotify. So we are now on Spotify, everybody. Please check us out there too. Any other questions before I say that there was like a little parenthetical that I'd wanted to say about Redhead specifically?
I have nothing. I've enjoyed what little bits I've watched of it. I think the rotating element of it will allow it to kind of keep it fresh and allow you to explore all the different angles of Daggerheart. I'm very much looking forward to seeing it grow and the Colossus of the Drylands one. I will be there for the premiere of episode 1, assuming I'm not asleep, when you jump back into the GM chair, especially.
I can't wait to be back in the GM chair, but I also, like I said, it's been awesome getting to be a player for once and getting to be a player in an actual play without all that stress, you know.
Can't relate.
Yeah, being a player it was my secret little kink, and now it's been realized. But on the topic of awesome, super talented people in the Daggerheart community who are part of the Dice Rolleth, Redhead. They are the graphic designer who helped me redesign my Daggerheart one-page rule sheet. They are also the person who, on Heart of Daggers, as well as the TDR Discord server, which, by the way, we have the Dice Rolleth Discord server, and announced in my own server in my original creations channel, Redhead has designed a template for Canva. Yep. So if you are trying to design a campaign frame, Redhead now has a campaign frame template for Canva that you can get, and I have to double check. Is it free?
It is free on Heart of Daggers.
There you go.
Because I've already gone and grabbed it and downloaded it because, Dragon's Vault and Into Mythal Skies is going to need a template, and I do not have the time to build something from scratch. So thank God for this community. It is very helpful. Well, as I say, we will put links in the description to the Dice Rolleth, all the various channels and everything. If you want to go check out that actual play, if you're looking for something a little bit more community-focused actual play rather than any of those official ones from Darrington Press, I highly recommend checking it out. It is going to be much more like your games, and you're going to have a lot more fun. I always prefer kind of smaller APs where it feels much more like a real game, if you ask me.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of APs where they don't. I mean, every now and then we do edit out certain mistakes and stuff like that, but that's just because it would like affect the the viewing experience, right? But I like also smaller actual plays because I think that a lot of people have this sort of idea, especially from watching bigger ones like Critical Role and stuff, that they need to be like incredible, amazing, professional GMs and performers and stuff, and they don't realize that you can just do this as a regular person. Yep, with 100%. No acting experience or whatever, you know?
100%. Can confirm. It's my favorite thing. Anyway, that is our community spotlight for this week, and that brings us to the end of Daggerheart to Heart for this episode. Thank you very much for listening. Don't forget to jump in the comments below. Let us know what tips you have for running social encounters, what other APs we should check out, and all of the other things. Besides, if you want to get mentioned in Community Spotlight, reach out to us. We would love to spotlight other members of the community as well. So don't forget to like, thumbs, stars, subscribe, all of those things to make sure you don't miss a future episode and we find out what you're enjoying. Nico, what are you up to at the moment? Where can people find you?
You can find everywhere, all the social media things on my linktree, it's Nico DeGallo, ITSNICODEGALLO. I'm an actor, voice actor, burlesque host, burlesque performer, professional game master, and TTRPG content creator. I'm making Daggerheart to Heart, the Dice Rolleth. I got my own shorts that I'm going to be getting back into soon. I'm streaming now, myself playing Baldur's Gate, and probably Elden Ring soon. Maybe Elden Ring, maybe something else on Twitch and YouTube. I'm not good at games like that, by the way, and I've never actually played a Soulsborne game.
Good luck.
So it's going to just be a lot of me either throwing temper tantrums or crying, but, feel free to hop in.
Elden Ring was my first Soulsborne. I was getting really into it, and then my PC died, and I didn't play it for 6 months, and I fell out of it.
Oh, no.
yeah,
Well, okay, on that depressing note, how about you make us smile by telling us all the wonderful things you do, Gethin?
Yes, well, you can find me at the Welsh DM everywhere. We'll rebrand eventually, I'm sure. I am currently hard at work at getting the Dragon's Vault all put together. The art coming in is gorgeous. I cannot wait to put it all together. More details to come soon. I am actually also going on a little bit of a break in July because I'm too busy and I need to recharge my batteries. There is a new video out on this channel discussing running 2 monsters as one to have more inventive and interesting encounters in your party. And there's another video coming later in the month that I'm not going to talk about yet because, well, I haven't finished it. But yes, that is me. And that is an episode of Daggerheart to Heart. We will catch you next time for another Heart to Heart.
Bye.